You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
Touchdown! A.J. Brown! That's beautiful. And intercepted by the Eagles. He is hit. They've got him again! They've got him back at the 26. He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles!
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Corey Naito, David Neese. How are you gentlemen feeling before we get the chaos ensues?
Good. Another winning Sunday for the Eagles. Winning cures everything.
Was it a win? Did they win?
They did win. I know some people still might not enjoy it, but a win is a win, and they got to win against one of the top passing defenses in the league. So I think most people should enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. It's great to talk about a win after, what is it? This is the 3 weeks since the last time we talked about a win. So, yeah, it was a long time coming, and they did it the same way they've pretty much done all of them, by playing one great half and one kind of mediocre. But we'll get into that in a minute.
We will get into that, but first we have to get into something else. Per my sources, the Eagles have re-signed Brandon Graham, and I'm breaking this news a couple days after everybody else in the world broke this news. But yes, Brandon Graham is unretired. He's back to being an Eagle. Before we get to the game, big salute to Brandon Graham, right? Because he's probably one of the more deserving, treasured Eagles in the Eagles history. I feel like. Guy came out, they considered him a bust because he was in the wrong position, and then he flourished into this trash-talking gem. Is anybody else a little bit like in between Brandon coming out of retirement to play this season for the Eagles? Because I'm a little, I like it, but I don't want him to ruin his legacy as a Bird.
I've been going back and forth with this. You go out on top, you win a Super Bowl. He got hurt. You kind of have the Brett Favres in the back of your mind where, he kept coming back and just got uglier and uglier. Jason Kelsey he didn't do the same, but you thought, okay, he was going to hang it up. They come back and the year just wasn't the year that everybody was hoping. So I get that point, but to me, if a guy still has the will, the desire, and the want to still play. And I think Brandon Graham certainly has that. And if you hear and talk to people that know him, I think he wasn't ready to retire last year. He was kind of told and maybe coerced into being like, hey, you got a pretty serious injury. You won the Super Bowl. You've played 15 years at a high level. What else more could you want? But BG wants more. So I'm all for it. I think, he's not going to be playing every single snap. He's going to give you maybe 10, 15 snaps, and he's going to give it his absolute all. And I think that's what you need from a very, very thin edge group. And I think Howie Roseman still needs to add on top of BG.
Yeah, I like it. I agree with everything Corey said as far as, I don't know if he was, coerced. Yeah, I mean, he may have been, but I do think he was leaving before he wanted to leave. I don't think he had any interest in really doing that, but everybody wants to go out on top, and I think he kind of had it in his mind. If I, win the Super Bowl, I can, ride off as a two-time champion. But a lot of people don't like listening to like what A.J. Brown has to say a lot of times. But after he won the Super Bowl, his first feeling was it wasn't what I thought. What I enjoy is competing. What I enjoy is suiting up, and that's what Brandon likes as well. And in addition, to the other guys, mentioned like Kelsey and that, they had to play every snap. Quarterbacks play every snap. Center plays every snap. Brandon's going to be playing 15 snaps. And I think where he'll be most effective is helping them set the edge in the run game, which has been sorely missed. He's not there to pick up Nolan Smith's, workload. He's there picking up bottom of the roster type workload, like what Za'Darius just left behind, 20 snaps. So I actually love it. I think the desire's there. He wants to compete. And who knows, maybe he ends up with the third ring. I mean, he sees what's going on here, and he thinks that he could bring a little bit of juice back to the team to help them, through a turbulent time that they've been going through.
I'm still in between just because I don't want him to come like I think the way that I could be out of the in between on this is if the Eagles do make a move and bring in another edge rusher, because I don't want this to be like all on Brandon where it's like he came to save the day and they throw everything on him. Like what if the 15 snaps turns into 30 snaps and whatever case may be, and he ends up injured again? Like he's one of the guys I feel like he should be untouchable when it comes to criticism at this point, because he's been through the fire with us and he's been battling. Like last season he didn't have to come back and he still came back with that injury and played in the Super Bowl and was still impactful. What I am looking forward to is his impact in the locker room. Speaking with BG in the past in the locker room, like he really holds down the younger guys. And I think in a season where we started the year with Jalen Carter having a spitting on Dak Prescott before we even started the game. And then you have these weird moments where we're seeing an inconsistency from Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis was on a tear but has disappeared since then. Nolan Smith is injured. Jalen Hunt kind of disappeared. Darius Smith retires. Like it was a lot of chaos, and to have him in that room, I feel like he could be the glue. But the glue only works if there's multiple pieces being put together by that glue. And if they don't get another pass rusher to be that other end, it's going to be a little bit unfair to BG, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think BG is going to help in the pass rush, but I think more importantly, you mentioned, I think he's going to be a huge help in the locker room with this very young team. I can't wait to see how he takes Shahad Campbell under his wing. I mean, I think this is a big-time upgrade for Campbell, who's already in the early discussions for Defensive Rookie of the Year with the way he's been able to play. But I also think BG is going to help more in the run defense. The Eagles' rush defense has been pretty leaky this year, and Brandon Graham has shown that he can seal the edges on the run. And we saw that the Eagles did a bit better against Minnesota, keeping Jordan Mason in check, thanks to Nakobe Dean, who had a really nice game playing 31 out of the 69 snaps, almost 46% of the defensive snaps. So you put BG out there, and he brings that energy. He brings that trash talk, as you mentioned, that a lot of players love, and some of them admit they miss. I think this is only a win-win, and it comes on the cheap. I mean, I don't know the contract details for Graham, but it's not costing them much to bring him back.
Yeah, and I think we touched on it last week about how we made a mistake. This was one of them. He didn't keep a few of the veteran guys that were, very important last season, and it is what basically precipitated them to have to get Zadarius Smith in the room, in the edge room, because they did not have any veteran voices. And now that he left, that role was yet again wide open. So it makes perfect sense for me to come in here. But I agree with Brian. I do not think this will be the move. I don't think that's what this is for. But I think for everything y'all just mentioned, it is a huge upgrade in the locker room. It's a huge upgrade as your edge 4. I mean, it's a really safe signing, and I don't think there's anything that could really harm his legacy. I think he's almost bulletproof. Nobody's quite that, but I think he's about as close as it can get.
So I need to ask you guys a question, but first I need to make sure that this person is actually watching the show still. Jay Fizz, if you're still out there, can you just comment in the chat? 'Cause I think you know where I'm going with this. But his question is, what could he do to make being a two-time Super Bowl champion less? Once upon a time, Jay Fizz showed up on the show in the chat and mentioned that he could beat up a kangaroo. Do we think if BG faced the kangaroo, he would actually beat the kangaroo?
Yes.
Now, would that tarnish his legacy, or would that enhance his legacy? Like, would it be a mythical creature at that point in Eagles history?
I think it would enhance him. Wasn't there a video that came out of Australia where like a kangaroo was like hijacking somebody's dog, and the guy went over there and just got in a fist fight? Yeah, that would be BG. It'll go viral, and he'll be more beloved than he ever has been.
Do either of you think you could beat a kangaroo?
No.
Just wanted to clarify that.
I wouldn't stick around to find out.
Jay Fizzle's got the X's and O's on how to beat a kangaroo.
He's been studying this for the last 2 years. So I don't doubt it at this point.
Wasn't there a movie like Kangaroo Jack where like
Yes,
they
it
turn him
was.
into a boxing kangaroo?
No, I don't know.
I don't think
So-
this was on the Flipping the Birds
It
podcast. bingo
definitely
card.
wasn't. I didn't expect Jay Fizz to show up and for me to remember the kangaroo talk. But let's hop around, right? Vikings, Eagles win 28-22. By far the best game of Jalen Hurts' career. By far the best game of Devontae Smith's career. A regular game in the life of AJ Brown, of what should be a regular game, right? Did you guys come off impressed by this offense, or is it kind of one of those things where, like, I personally feel like the Eagles got away, like if we finally saw talent take over bad play calling, like, you know, it came out that Devontae Smith was nudging for that play action call all game. He said it was there, like it just had to be called, and it took Kevin Patullo some time to make that call. AJ Brown, we all saw that what he said in the end zone when he made the catch. You know, I don't want to repeat it, but pretty much, you know, it took them that long to target him, throw the balls to him. But we saw Jalen also make some great decisive plays. You know, telling AJ to run downfield against, I think it was a safety or linebacker on the left side.
Yeah.
And then we saw him make a tightrope throw to AJ for an end zone score on the right side. Like, it was a great overall game, but the run game still wasn't fully there. And there was still some questionable play calling. It's just one of those games where it's an outlier where, like, the talent just, you know, showed up as opposed to the offensive play calling? Or do you think everything's kind of meshing together for this team?
I don't think everything's meshing. I think you look at that first half, they had that touchdown drive, 12 plays, 75 yards, but that touchdown happened because Jalen Hurts played backyard football and legitimately pointed at AJ to go deep because there was nothing available on that fourth down play. Now, the talent obviously played out in favor of the Eagles. AJ Brown was able to get past the safety and score the big touchdown. But then what do they do after that? Absolutely nothing. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And then their final drive before the half, they basically just waved the white flag after Hurts got sacked. And then you go in the second half, and they were still struggling a little bit until Jalen Hurts kind of played hero ball and said, I'm just going to have to win this game. And he and Devontae Smith just went off. Jalen Hurts made some great scrambles, some amazing throws on the run. Devontae Smith made some really tough catches. A.J. Brown had that nice comeback catch on a big third down to keep that drive going. But it just still doesn't look right. You look at the game film, these routes just don't look good. They don't really look like Hurts has many options. You know, you're looking at a third and long or a third and short, I should say, and you got guys streaking down the field with no check down, no underneath route, and you're just kind of scratching your head as to why this is happening. I just think that this offense got bailed out by the big plays, and maybe that's how they win games this year. It's not the rushing attack. It's Jalen Hurts airing it out. He is one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. He put that on display on Sunday. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward. The positives, definitely seeing them go under center. They had 16 plays under center, which was the most in any game this year. Some of that had to do with Brett Toth struggling to snap the football in the shotgun, which I'm going to give Toth a little benefit of the doubt. He said post-game that he didn't practice at all at center this past week. He walked through 3 plays at center, and pretty much everything else was at left guard. So I'll give him a pass there. But the Devontae play, Kevin Patullo came out today and said that play was installed on Wednesday, and they walked through it, and basically they had these plays to build off of what look they were getting. And if they got the look they liked that Devontae saw, that's when they pulled the trigger on it. So, you know, Devontae Smith comes out and people are like, oh yeah, we saw it. And Jalen goes and says that he was chirping about it. And then Patullo says, oh, well, that play was implemented earlier in the week, and it was either going to be drawn up for him or AJ, depending on the look. So, I mean, I don't know what to believe. I would assume they'd have something in the game plan leading up to it, and these guys aren't just basically drawing plays on the sideline. But I just think this offense still needs to put a complete game together.
Yeah, I think the big plays that you mentioned, Hurts doing the finger point, which kind of baited Isaiah Rodgers to come off of his man there because he knows those hand signals and it worked. They kind of tricked him there. Then Devontae called his number. Both of those plays, what you're not hearing is, Kevin Patullo calling those. But the big issue, for me is, the talent is beating the play calling, the poor play calling, but it's just not sustainable. They were 5 for 5 on those big plays there for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. But that's not how an offense is structured to win games and to function. And the problem is the Eagles just were not prepared for the running game to struggle the way it has. So much of their passing game is set up by their running game. And it has bitten them terribly because they just can't do it. And Patullo did try to get the running game going. I think Saquon had 18 carries. He said he was going to give him a lot more carries than he did. But the running game just isn't working. And, I think we mentioned it last week. This isn't just on Patullo. It's also on Jeff Stoutland because, in my opinion, Stoutland U has been looking a lot more like Stoutland Community College here lately.
Okay, guys, thank you for
agree.
coming to today's podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
But David makes a good point, and I think a lot of people don't want to address the elephant in the room, and it's that this offensive line, as good and talented as they are, they just aren't meshing the way that they did last year. I got people asking me, well, why isn't it working? Why is Saquon not getting 50 yards a game? When we talked about this last week, he's getting touched behind the line of scrimmage more than half of his carries. It's hard to get the running game going when your running back has to elude 1 or 2 would-be tacklers as soon as he's got the ball in his hand. So I think the offensive line knows that they're frustrated with the performance. And I just wonder, and again, we touched on it, how 2,000-yard rushers never have that same success the following year. I don't think anybody thought it would be this low, but they ran the ball a ton last year. And I don't even know how many tush pushes they ran last year, but that play is physically demanding. We've heard Jason Kelce literally say that he hates the play because of what he has to do at the center position, but they all know it needs to be done because it's unstoppable. So I'm wondering if these guys just are still feeling the lingering effects from last year. Obviously, they'll never admit to that, but the bye week is a little later this year. They didn't have an early bye week, so it's a blessing in one way because you get pretty much halfway through the season, you regroup, and then you're kind of recharged for the second half. But at the same time, you got to gut your way through 2 months of the season. So I just think that what David said is it's not false. Like, this offensive line needs to shore it up because it starts up front.
Before we get into the defense, let's kind of like let's connect the 2 dots, right? With the offensive line struggling with staying healthy at this point, November 4th is a trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken. Could you see the Eagles making a move for a veteran offensive lineman and doing a plug and play move where if it needs to be center, then it's a center. If it needs to be a left guard, then it needs to be a left guard. Or I still have a big question mark on Tyler Steen. I'm not a fan of having Brett Soft in there because I feel like we've drafted enough linemen that somebody has to be ahead of him, and it kind of blows my mind. Like I'm in the I think David's David's question about Stoutland University is justifiable because we've drafted about, let's say, 3 or 4 offensive linemen in the last two years, and not a single one of them has started or even come in to replace anybody. We had the kid from Michigan who's no longer on the roster. He was the right guard. God, I'm terrible at names. Keegan, yes. He's not even on the roster now, if I'm not mistaken, or the practice squad.
The last 3 they took in last year's draft aren't on the team. The last 3 players. Yeah, the depth has really been bad. Cameron not on there either.
I'm interested if Drew Kendall gets any looks this week at center. I know they're not going to divulge what they might do. I know there's rumors where you kick Landon Dickerson in to be center, and you move around that way. But what, how far apart is Drew Kendall
Mm-hmm.
to Toth right now?
Exactly.
Considering
That's
that
my
he's not
question.
really practicing as a center, so like I don't know. Maybe we'll see that, but and then they got the guy from the Rams, Lampkin,
Yeah.
and
But he's on IR, right?
he's on IR. He should be
Okay.
able to come back soon. Dude seems like a mauler. I
Yes.
mean, this dude just seems like a pit bull ready to just pounce on somebody. So I don't know. I mean, I think if Jurgens continues to stay banged up, you have to find a backup option because, as Nick Sirianni says, you can never have too many centers on your roster on game day. So right now, they don't really have anybody outside of Jurgens, in my opinion. I mean, you've got Toth, but he's struggling to snap out of the shotgun, and that's 98% of your offense.
I was gonna say, wow. It's
One of
it's weird to. I'm sorry, Dave.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that it's very weird that for a team that values the trenches as much as the Eagles do, which is the top part of the league, they're lacking on both sides of the ball this season, at least.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is, and I've said this during the draft too. Like for the past 4 years, every year somebody is just pounding the table on Twitter and ESPN and everywhere else. The Eagles need to draft an OT in round one. They need to take Lane's replacement. But unless an OT gets hurt, they never see the field. It isn't a
Mm-hmm.
rotational like defensive tackle and some these other positions. So if Lane, played for 3 more seasons, well, hell, the guy's gone in a year or two by the time he even ever steps foot onto the field. So that's been part of the problem. That's why you see him taking these quasi, like Tyler Steen, a guy who played tackle in college and they moved him to guard. They've been looking at those kind of projects. And if they're going to stay that way, like in the trade deadline, a guy I like is from Carolina named Brady Christensen. He's played tackle in the NFL. He's played guard. He's played left guard, left tackle. I mean, he's kind of been everywhere. And he's like 6'6", 300. But he kind of fits the mold for the kind of, offensive lineman they would get, because I don't see them taking a big swing. Because if they were going to do that, it would already been done. I mean, the success for the Eagles in the trenches has been building them, has been teaching them, developing them. So it doesn't look like the kind of move that they would make, investing a lot of capital to try to get somebody that's of any stature at this point.
That's true. Um, Marina Sands says we have two developing offensive tackles in Hinton and Williams. And that rookies don't play without a year of Stalin University.
And don't forget Lakin. They invested 2 to 3 years with him and then just let him go this year. Like that didn't work out either. He was supposed to be the other Aussie who was coming here, following
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Mailata's footsteps, and they just let him walk, a couple months ago. So they've definitely had their issues in developing these guys.
Very interesting that it's been the most unquestioned portion of the coaching staff as well as of the offense is what's going on with Stalin U. But defensively, the Eagles they're taking a hit at CB2 spot, which we've spoken about many times with the departure of Isaiah Rodgers, the push out of Darius Slay, and they have I think what I'm very fearful of this team is that they have more needs that are very premier needs than people want to admit. Like they need an offensive guy, a swing tackle. They need somebody that's able to play on the outside and play on the inside, which they used to pride themselves on having. They need a CB2 because Keely Ringo is just not it right now. We know Dory Jackson is definitely not it, and we need an edge rusher because guys like Jalix Hunt, they produced last season because they weren't playing starting roles. They weren't taking starter snaps. And then we lose to Darius Smith. We gain Brandon Graham, but it's still not enough I feel like for this team to carry themselves into a deep postseason run. Defensively, what do you feel like how we can actually address we can say band-aid or band-aid defense for them to have a deep run?
I think the edge rusher position is far most important because if you could get a guy that can create the pressure and speed up the quarterback's clock, that helps the struggling cornerbacks in Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo because in theory, they don't have to cover as long. If you get to the quarterback, the QB's either getting sacked or he's got to dump it off or he's just got to get rid of it. But hearing from Vic Fangio today, he's not the sky is falling with Jackson and Ringo. He said that he thought Adoree played fine before he got hurt. He thought that Keely Ringo played fine. He said that a lot of the catches that Ringo has been giving up have come against really tough routes, and he believes that Ringo can still turn it around. So I don't know if they're going to address cornerback too. They've got Jacorian Bennett coming off IR, and he's going to be coming back soon. And, Fangio admitted, he's like, I can't give a fair assessment on Jacorian because he just hasn't been practicing. And we all know that practice is essential for Vic Fangio. Like, you have to practice in order to play on this defense. But he did say that they're going to give Bennett a long look once he gets back. Maybe he can kind of turn things around. But I thought watching that Minnesota game, you didn't really hear a lot about Adoree Jackson or Keely Ringo. Like, yeah, maybe a couple plays here and there against Jefferson and Addison, but all things considered, I don't think they were some of the main reasons why they gave up the chunk plays. I mean, Drew Makuba missed a tackle on Justin Jefferson that should have been a 10-yard gain that turned into a 20-some yard gain. There's a couple other things that went wrong, but I think they need to get an edge rusher. And I kind of like Bradley Chubb from the Dolphins. He played with Vic Fangio a couple years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it fits. And I wrote about this last week, but Chubb had almost a career year when he was playing for Vic Fangio. So I think it can make some sense. He's a veteran.
But does he have a big contract?
I'm sorry?
Bradley Chubb, does he have a big contract tied to him?
No, it's not that big. I think he's got 1 year left. It's not super huge. But I think that he could be a guy that could fit in nicely for this defense. And he's shown that he can do it at a high level. And I mean, Miami, I'm surprised Mike McDaniel still has that he still has a job. So
damn. Corey, you're going for straight for the haymakers today.
Well, I mean, that's an utter disaster down there. So Chubb is owed $30 million next year. So it is a little expensive, but you could also try and maybe restructure that. But I think that would be a solid move. I think if you get edge and you get a perennial pass rusher, that will help on the back end.
Actually, for the next 2 years, he's due $30 million. But that would be a surprisingly good move by them. When it sticking with the same team, I was actually looking for Jalen Phillips because I feel like before he got injured, he was actually coming into his own under Vic Fangio, and you saw him come off the edge and actually do damage before he hurt himself. But either way, I mean, if the Dolphins are having a fire, so I think the Eagles should definitely dip their hands in and make something happen because we need somebody sooner rather than later. You don't want to end up in a Robert Quinn situation where you trade for a guy and the guy just never fitting into the situation. And is nobody questioning Bryce Huff and how he's actually flourishing on the Robert Saleh as opposed to what he did out here?
I think they just used him wrong here. I mean, David could probably talk a little bit better about that, but they just didn't use him correctly. Oh, you're on mute, Dave.
He's essentially Jason Babin, if you guys remember him. He's just a hand in the dirt, just attacks the quarterback, just no regard for the running game, and that just wasn't working in Philly. It was just a bad fit. But for another position, so I don't say edge, I would go with defensive tackle. And I know a lot of people don't talk about that, but they haven't really been able to collapse the pocket. And when you're unable to do that, the quarterback just steps up, which just erases the edge rushers. The edge rushers are coming around, and then you've seen it the past 2 weeks with Carson Wentz, Jackson Dart. Most of those big plays from the opposing offenses have come outside of structure. It's come when Carson's on the move or Jackson was on the move because they were unable, to get them down. And when you're not maintaining the middle with, interior pressure, they'll just continually step up. And then your edge rushers are 3-4 yards in the backfield, and they just can't get anything done. And I think a lot of people thought that Milton Williams was a product of playing beside Jalen Carter. And I think they've learned that's not the case. And maybe even the Eagles thought they can plug and play anybody right there, but that's just not how it works in the NFL.
And it doesn't seem like Jalen Carter's in his mode as of yet. Even though he had a big hit on Carson Wentz, we haven't seen much, like I mentioned before, much damage out of him and Jordan Davis lately. Eagles, it was an impressive win against the Vikings. I feel like they took a step in the right direction. But can they put more pieces together to make a better run? They have the Giants coming up, and then after that they have their bye week. Giants coming down to Philadelphia. I don't want to say we're expecting a blowout again because I feel like we may have jinxed that one and gotten our ass whooped. But what are your expectations? What do you need to see out of this? We'll start with offense again. What do you need to see out of this offense to say, okay, like 2 weeks in a row, like they're putting things together? I mean, I think we all had the same notion that the play calling is still not there. It's still pretty bad. The offensive line is still pretty bad. The run game is just non-existent. What needs to happen against the Giants for you to say, like, okay, like this team is putting together at the right time?
They got to play a complete game on offense. They just haven't done it yet. I mean, if you didn't watch that Denver Giants game last week, the Giants gave up 33 points in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're seeing that, I mean, if you're A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, you've got a quick chance to lick your chops and say, oh, my goodness, we're at home. We can try and revenge and get a bounce back win against them after they smacked us in the mouth at their place. They got to play a full game. I mean, the 3 and outs are what's super concerning for me. I'm okay with a drive stalls after 6-7 plays, but they have way too many and in consecutive order 3 and outs where it's not even remotely close where, oh, well, hey, they didn't get a 3rd and 4. It was a good defensive play. No, it's a loss of 2 on a run, another minimal gain on a run, and now they're at 3rd and 13, and that's when they're becoming predictable because they have to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they just need to play a complete game of football against its Giants defense that is not very good. I mean, their secondary is bad. They don't really stop the run. I was shocked that they held Denver scoreless for those 3 quarters on the road on Sunday. I was so surprised. So the offense needs to play a complete game. And you mentioned, can't expect a blowout. I agree. But Vegas has the Eagles as a 7-point favorite, which I think is a little high. This Giants team has something different going on with the 2 kids at quarterback and running back in Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo. I mean, they believe that they can win every game that they play now, and that's scary. So, if you're a fan going to the game on Sunday, it's going to be awesome. First Kelly Green game of the year. If you're thinking that the Giants are going to come in and roll over, then you're going to be sadly surprised. So offensively, they got to show me 60 full minutes.
Yeah. In addition to playing 4 quarters, which Corey's right, they have not done one game this season yet. For me, I'll just beat the same dead horse I've been on. They have to establish the run. Until they're able to do that, they're more of a pretender than a contender, in my opinion. Because once
David with the haymakers too today.
Well, when you can't do that, and so much is predicated on their running game, their offense, it just because we beat the play calling down constantly as well. But look at the offense, look at the routes. I mean, for all of us who watch all 22, you look at it and I understand it completely. That's pretty elementary because I shouldn't be understanding everything that's going on that field. And and it worked. Their offense was never super complex, but it was basically, you can't stop us. We're going to put, this running back in this ball, and we're just going to run it right down you constantly over and over and over. And then once you bring people up to stop it, we're going to hit you with over the top with pass plays. And it's worked. But if they're not able to establish that, it's just 60% of their offensive play calling is just it's just paper. It's worthless. There's just no point in it. And
And
I also would like to see him spread the ball more around. Like in the Giants loss, it was the Dallas Goddard game. Like he had 9 catches, 110 yards. And then in the Vikings game, he completely disappears. He gets like 18 yards. He's not even part of the offensive, plan. So in addition to the run, it can't just be an AJ Brown game or Devontae Smith game or the Dallas Goddard week. I mean, they got to, get back to doing what made the offense fun, where they just were, the play calling and the scheme was kind of simple, but it was unpredictable because you just didn't know where they were going to come at you.
and to add to David's point real quick about contenders and pretenders, they were outgained again on Sunday. That's every game they have been outgained. And I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but they have to be one of the very few teams to have a winning record at 5-2 and being outgained in every single game. I mean, that's nearly unheard of. So, I agree with what David said. I think that they've got to get the run game going. And hey, maybe they just got this weird luck and they've kind of got this magic juju going around where, hey, yeah, all that matters is they win the game. It doesn't matter about the stats at the end of the day. Like Jalen Hurts said in Kansas City, we got the win. Shut up. And that's great. But you start getting going against these teams that are hitting their strides and they're firing on all cylinders when you want to be come playoff time, it could be a little dicey.
When it comes to the run game, and this is obviously a small sample size, should they consider the idea of kind of going with a dual threat attack until everything's solidified? Like Tank Bigsby touched the ball and he got a good, I think it was like almost like 10 yards gain on that one run, right? And it's nothing against Saquon, but Saquon's coming off a year with 2,000 rushing yards on top of the fact that the offensive line is not really blocking for him. He's not as young as he used to be, but he's not an older running back yet. But my thing is like, you don't want to put so much wear and tear on Saquon when you're going to need him come playoff time. You're going to need him to find the rhythm. So why not try to find a way to experiment with a Bigsby or, a Shipley? I know Shipley's injured. I think he had a concussion, if I'm mistaken. But experiment a little bit and switch things up. Like, I understand that their way of winning the last several years has been with just running down people's throat and being predictable, right? But spice things up a little bit. The just because you have the recipe for a good entree doesn't mean you can't add a little spice to it. You can't, add a little seasoning to throw it, to add more flavor to it. I feel like, I'm trying my best to dance around this. The Eagles coaching staff are very fortunate to be in a position that they are in. They have top tier talent on offense. They have top tier talent on defense. It's time to kind of put your big boy pants on and say and acknowledge that, embrace it, and actually earn it at this rate. I've given Nick Sirianni a lot of flack over the years because I feel like he's deserved it. This offense is his at the end of the day. The same offense we're seeing right now is that offense that we saw when he first came in before Steichen took over. It's the same offense we saw in 2023 when everybody was blaming Brian Johnson. These questionable route runs for AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. I'm curious to see how much of the game against the Vikings they went a little rogue, but more kind of organized. But I feel like it's time to kind of say like, hey, like let's switch things up, let's add a little flavor to it. And if you can't, then that's a bigger question for Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. I'm not saying fire Nick Sirianni right now, but I'm saying like things have to be mixed up at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see more Tank Bigsby. I mean, for the draft capital they spent on him, I think he's deserving of being a backup to Saquon Barkley. Last year, Bigsby had almost 800 yards rushing on 168 carries and scored 7 touchdowns. He was averaging 4.6 yards an attempt, and that's with
he's not a scrub.
A poor Jacksonville Jaguar offense. So, yeah, I mean, the kid's got some juice for sure. Dylan was an interesting scratch on Sunday. I thought Will Shipley would be more involved this year. I know he struggles with pass protection, and I think maybe that's why he's probably not seeing the field as much. But, yeah, I mean, maybe sprinkle in Bigsby a little bit more. I would like to see Jahan Dotson get a couple
Yes.
targets, maybe. I don't know. Everybody was talking about how they had this great connection in the offseason and they worked out in Texas together. I
Even
don't know
John
what.
Mechie a little bit.
Yeah, like I just don't know. And hey, maybe Dotson obviously hasn't lived up to the billing of where he got drafted. We see that happen all the time, but I just have a hard time believing that they can't scheme him up or he can't get open where, you got AJ, Devontae, and Dallas Goddard, and he could just be that fourth option, but he's pretty much non-existent in most of these games.
But I think that's more of a Jalen thing where Jalen's not going through the progression of his reach.
Well, that's true too, and it goes
Yeah.
back to David's point. If the offensive line's not blocking,
Exactly.
well, Jalen doesn't have time to go to his third or fourth read. So yeah,
Exactly.
I agree with that 100%.
To speak on Saquon, when I go back and look at the games, I don't see a player who's tired or injured or struggling. I just see a guy who just simply has no room. And the plays that he's made that, he's had gains on, and Tank too, that was an outside run. They split the zone and do some 11 personnel running and stuff. And that's the plays that have been working. Those are the plays that have been effective because it gives him a few yards to get moving, to find some space. Because on some of those runs, you still see him doing spins and jukes. And I mean, he's still moving really well. It's just when people have their hands on you and 0.9 of a yard, I mean, you're just not going to be able to go anywhere. And, maybe some of the offensive bursts that they've had will eventually work in reverse of what happened last year, where some of these shot plays in the pass game will start opening up some of the running game, which, is not exactly how it's designed. But, and Corey mentioned about the points. The Eagles have averaged 23.8 points per game this year, and they've given up 23.6 points per game this year. So, yeah, that is not a sustainable, way to maintain a, 5-2 style record going through the end of the year.
I completely agree with that. Marina Sands mentioned that Dylan has been solid. I know Corey mentioned that Dylan was a healthy scratch, was a bit odd, but Saquon scares defenses and they load the box when he is in. And it, call me naive, right? But going back to the Tank Bigsby idea, right? I feel like sprinkling him in and getting a little creative, where what was the sprinkling and getting a little creative with him and just to spell Saquon, creating a little room for the offensive line to get into a rhythm, right? Because it's weird. Like with Saquon, I feel like more often than not, we've seen inside zone runs quite often, as opposed to the outside runs where he kind of flourished. I mean, he had the big backwards hurdle off of outside run. He broke off a lot of big plays against the Commanders in the playoffs. It was an outside run, and it seems like everything that works for the Eagles, and I think Corey mentioned this maybe last week or the week before, everything that works for the Eagles always disappears. Like if it's one play that's really good, you won't see that play again for the rest of the game or for the next 2 weeks, and it's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah, I just, it's complexing to me. Again, we talked about it. I'm not trying to pile on Kevin Patullo, but again, he was in those meetings with Kellen Moore. He was basically given the keys to a car that was fully sustainable, had the engine clean as a whistle, and it's like they just ripped out the engine and now they're just trying to put all different parts in to see if it could ride again. And it just doesn't make sense to me. There's no RPOs. I mean, I love the play action on Sunday. I mean, that was why Devontae got wide open, was because they went out to set and establish the run early, and then the way the game dictated, they had to throw it. I think that they still need to dictate what they want to do on offense, regardless of what the opposing defenses are doing. But because of the lack of success on the running game, you also have to find a fine line where you can't just run it for the sake of running. I know David has mentioned that a couple times as well, but I want to see some checks too. Like we saw Saquon Barkley get handoffs and there's 8 guys in the box. Like obviously that you're at a mismatch. So where is there a check either from Patullo signaling to Hurts, before the line, hey, or Hurts has that full autonomy at the line. Hey, let's check out of this. And one of the biggest things to me that I still don't understand, they get to the line late, like so late in the play clock still. I mean, I noticed that Sunday, nearly every play, it seemed like they only had 3 seconds left before
Do you think they do it so the defenses are not being don't have enough time to register what they're about to do since they're so predictable? Like maybe one of those things where it's kind of like they're just trying to work around it.
I mean, because the defense knows they only got 2 seconds to snap the ball, so that gives the defensive advantage.
Okay.
If you come up to the line with 10 to 12 seconds, you can take your time. Jalen can assess. You get all the communication that needs to be out there that Devontae Smith said was missing a couple of weeks ago. And then now the defense doesn't know, are they going to snap it at 10? Are they going to snap it at 7? It keeps the defense on its heels a little bit. But when they're under center or when they're ready to go and there's only 3 seconds left, well, the defense knows, hey, in the next 2 seconds, this play's got to go. And they can time their jumps a lot better.
Yeah. Breaking the huddle faster also allows you to run motion. So you can see if the defense is in man or not. And I think it's fair to criticize the decision with Patullo because he was sold to the fan base as being the architect of the offense in 2024. They stated he was the one who, sat in there, come up with the plays, and that there wouldn't be a drop off. And the point of keeping him was for the continuity. He's worked with Jalen for 4 years. So, and to the other point of Dylan being a healthy scratch, I have to wonder if that fumble he had late against the Giants, what wasn't the reason, because that kind of killed any chance of a comeback they had, because that was a pretty big play, that they were moving the ball there. So
that and maybe the kicking game, the return game, because they had Gibson active for the first time. So I think maybe they were trying to crunch the roster numbers and figured, hey, Gibson could give us a little bit more of an edge there, and they'll roll with Bigsby this time. So it'll be something to keep an eye out for sure.
Definitely.
It'll be very interesting going forward. But speaking of going forward, we have a game on Sunday, boys. 1:00 p.m. Kelly Green week. Eagles, I feel like I think they're still undefeated in Kelly Green, correct? They're taking on the scrappy Giants. If there's anything guaranteed in this world, I feel like a revenge game for Jalen Hurts is a guaranteed thing. He does take these things pretty personal, and I think the Eagles will show up and show out. I don't think it's going to be a blowout game. I think, like I said, the Giants are pretty scrappy. I'm going to go 28-21 Philly.
Yeah, I'm going to go similar to last week. I'm going to go 28-24 Eagles. Although I did pick the Eagles to lose last week. That was more so because I thought Quinion wasn't going to be playing. But I'm going to give the Eagles 28-24 win. I don't think they get swept by the Giants here in the regular season. Kelly Green games brings an extra level of intensity at the link. So I think they're going to have a better plan on how to contain Dart. And now they know how physical Scatabo is as a runner. So I think the defense is going to be up for the challenge as well.
Yeah, and I think they underestimated that in both, which is a big reason Jalen Carter was a last-second scratch in that game. They probably thought they could get away with it. They couldn't. And you mentioned Jalen Hurts, a payback game. Well, I don't discount Saquon Barkley feeling the same way. I think his breakout is coming. This would be a good time to have it. I do think the Eagles will control this game a lot more than even what they did against the Vikings. I think they're winning 31-20.
Ooh. I don't know. David came ready on it for the podcast today.
It looks like we got a Marina 30-17, so a comfortable win there as well.
If it's a 30-17 win, I'm feeling very comfortable, and that means David has a good, easy drive home.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, listen, we appreciate you guys for coming on and joining and watching the show today. We're on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Sometimes we're spicy, sometimes we're I feel like most of the time we're pretty spicy. But yeah, we appreciate you guys for showing up. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Corey Naito and David Neese, and we're flipping the birds.
Flip. Flipping the bird.